This video is sponsored by Aquashine Exteriors, professional jet washing and cleaning services across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, including Dorset, Hampshire and Wiltshire. Are you feeling it's time to get that driveway nice and shiny for when you come home? Or are you wanting to get that guttering tidied up and spotless again? They deliver this, plus much, much more. Please head into the description below where you'll find their details for their website, including the socials, Facebook and Instagram. You also need to find their before and after portfolio. You can also call them on 07503 998 088 for a free quotation. Don't wait till next week. Don't think you'll do it another day. Pick up the phone, give them a call, check them out. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Cherries Red Army and another live Premier League debate, including Bournemouth, Brighton and Everton. We like to do these. We did it at the start of the season. Gives an overview of the rest of the Premier League. What's happening elsewhere? Because we've got to play 19 other teams and we've got to try and stay up. Now, if you're a regular to Cherries Red Army, thanks for your support. Thanks for checking out this video. But if you're new around here and you want to dip into another Premier League club, you want to check out, see how the Cherries are doing at some point, well, we'd appreciate it. Subscribe on our journey on YouTube. So hit the subscribe button. And also, you can do us a favor at some point this evening and hit the like button. It really does help this video grow. Takes about 0.0003 seconds to do. It's absolutely pain-free, so hit the like button. Now, the interactive chat is open this evening. We welcome all fans from Brighton, Everton and Bournemouth. Use the chat, debate, have conversations. That's what football's about. And you'll have an opportunity to ask questions later on in the show. If you weren't able to join us live, but you're checking this video out, we really do appreciate that. And you can let us know your thoughts in the comments as well. Well, that's the introductions over with. Time to get on with the stream, get our guests on. Let's talk Premier League football. Now, I'm going to try and be a neutral presenter this evening. I'll try my very best, but welcome to our guest first. We've got a Bournemouth perspective in the seat. You've seen him before. He's got a stats video out this week. It's Jon Spark. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on against Kirk. I'll keep track of how neutral you are, and we'll see how this goes by the end of the video. But yeah, I'm going to be looking forward to hearing the opinions of an Everton fan and a Brighton fan, because we do, as football fans, do tend to get trapped in our own bubble of the teams we support. So this should be a good fun.
It will be fun. Our first opposition guest on this Premier League debate for Everton is the Unholy Trinity Everton podcast. Mike, how are you?
Very well, Kirk. Thanks. Yeah, looking forward to a decent chat tonight. That's for sure. Like John said, it's always good to hear from fans of other clubs, because we are very much sheltered away, aren't we, at times, with the obsession of our own club. So I look forward to seeing what everyone's got to say.
And tell us about your podcast and where people can find you if they want to check out some Everton content this season.
Yeah, so we're on Twitter. Twitter's our main platform, to be fair. So at UHT Podcast. Obviously we're across the board. So your Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, all those places. One was actually put out today, our B-side, which is our spin-off podcast. It was actually will appeal to a lot of people who like fantasy Premier League. We had the FPL General on, who's well known in those circles. He was on today discussing his rise through the ranks of fantasy Premier League. So that was out today, but mostly every Sunday after the Blues are played, we'll be on. We'll be back this week as well as normal, discussing this weekend's game against Southampton.
Be free to use the interactive chat. Do let us know if you're joining us this evening. We've got Carol Tuller already in the chat, Cameron Meach, Chris Hubble and Mark Cole. So do use that chat. Do let us know. And our second opposition guest, I'm sure he's been very happy this season. A bit of a manager change. We'll talk about that later on. It's Tom from Albion Obsessed. We were going to speak to Tom on a Brighton preview, but obviously that got cancelled, but that'll come back around. How you doing, Tom?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Kirk. You all right, my friend?
Very, very good. Tell us about the Albion Obsessed, please.
Yeah, so you can find us across most socials. Twitter is where we do most of our stuff in terms of just that isn't podcasts. You can find us at Albion Obsessed. And very similar to Mike, all of our content gets put out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. And, we do post-match analysis. We've tried our hand at a few documentaries. We've interviewed ex-players. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming through. Some of the guys are doing some WSL stuff at the moment, which is really exciting. Feel free to check us out.
And of course, details are in the description below. So all links to Mike and Tom's podcast will be down there, the Twitter, Instagram, and the YouTube links. So freely, by one click, you can go and head over there and check out their stuff. And I'm looking forward to this evening. I think it's going to be a great night. How it's going to work, we're going to drop some topics on the screen. You can give us your thoughts in the chat. We're going to go round the room. And of course, if there's any debates in the room, if John wants to challenge Tom on something, he can do, but it's just a general chat. We want to know more about other clubs in the Premier League. Look, Tom, I'm going to come straight to you, and our first topic is thoughts on season so far. I've got that you're currently fourth, 6 games, 4 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss, mainly under Graham Potter. We'll talk about your new manager very, very soon, but scoring goals, not conceding too many, you must be very happy, fourth in the league.
Oh, ecstatic. If you'd given me that at the beginning of the season, even if after 6 games, I would have bitten your hand off. Scoring goals, so we're continuing that form that we finished the previous season on. Opening day, beating Manchester United at Old Trafford was incredible. It's something that in the history of our club we had never done. It's been a really fantastic season. A bit of a blip against Fulham where the performance dropped. And then we bounced back and we played Leicester and we conceded in the first minute. And my head was in my hands thinking, oh, God, this is going to be a tough day. But then we went out and put 5 past them. So, it's been a really good start to the season. Players have been performing really well. Not a huge amount of work done in the transfer window, but the boys have put in a huge shift so far. But then it all seemed to go a bit wrong in regards to Graham Potter leaving, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit.
For Everton then, Mike, you've got Frank Lampard. First full season, should we say, currently 13th, 7 games, 1 game, 4 draws, 2 losses, 5 goals, 6 conceded. But speaking off air, you're quite calm about the situation.
Very much so, yeah. Like I was saying, any kind of pressure doesn't exist from the fan base, from within the club. We believe Frank Lampard is the man to forward. I think the recruitment this summer has been excellent. I think the removal of a lot of the older players, should we say, players who are on big wages and not playing a great deal, not contributing. A lot of those players have gone. Most recently confirmed today, Alan, a player who 2 seasons ago under Carlo Ancelotti, we were, when he was getting injured and wasn't in the side and wasn't available, we were scratching our head thinking who's going to play, because it was him and Decore were the main 2. Look at our centre midfield now, and it's transformed. It's amazing what can happen over a summer and how your perspective can change. And Frank Lampard's under no pressure whatsoever. Don't believe anything that you read in any kind of national sport media, because they talk absolute nonsense. He's fine. He's happy. We love him. He's got an affinity with the club after what he managed to achieve last season. As much as it was absolutely horrendous for us as fans, and I never want to go through that ever again. It was that sort of cemented the relationship almost between Frank Lampard and the fans. And we always say about players and managers getting it, but he gets it. He gets the club. He gets the fans. He understands the importance of the club to us and the fact that we live and breathe our football club. And for me, he's been backed well in the window. He's made smart moves. I think he's really now starting to build a good base going forward, so hopefully more successful times.
interesting to hear, and we'll talk a little bit more about managers in the next topic, but it's really interesting to hear as an outsider that Frank Lampard's got that backing. Someone that's currently got the backing, John, is Gary O'Neill, and his odds for becoming potentially the next Bournemouth manager, they're increasing. But the season started under Scott Parker, and although it was a good opening day, it was a tough couple of games after that, and there was a change in management, but back at Bournemouth with competitive football, getting points on the board, and currently unbeaten under Gary O'Neill with another draw at Newcastle last time out.
Yeah, it's been a season of high highs and low lows so far. I think for Bournemouth, personally, I wasn't expecting us to beat Villa on the opening day of the season. I think that was probably the biggest shock. Well, I don't think it was the biggest shock of the opening weekend because I think Tom would definitely argue that point. But it was certainly a very good result for Bournemouth. And then what followed was the dip that I think we all expected. It just turned out to be far worse than many of us really hoped it would be. 4-0 against City isn't too bad. 3-0 at home to Arsenal ain't great, but it could have been worse. And then there comes the 9-0, which, caused a hell of a lot of change up within the club. Parker, we'll talk about him later, but O'Neill obviously comes in and things are on a low. But, halfway through Nottingham Forest, we are really worried about, how is this? It was a 1-0. It was 0-0 against Wolves, so that was a decent response in terms of just making sure that we solidified ourselves somewhat. And then 2-0 down at halftime against Forest, and I'm wondering, what kind of long-term damage has been done to the team after that 9-0 loss. But 45 minutes later, everything's looking absolutely fantastic again, and our record against teams outside the Big Six is going under the radar. I think a lot of fans of, I think teams outside of what would be called the Big Six, I think are a bit more aware about other teams amongst the other 14. So I don't think it's necessarily quite as much of a surprise to see where we are for a lot of clubs. But if I think I saw a tweet that went relatively viral by an Arsenal fan that was like, "I hate to alarm you, but Bournemouth are 12th." And it's like, yeah, because, we've only lost 3 games and we've won 2 and drawn 2. We're actually having a decent season, despite our goal difference looking, well, it is the worst in the league. So it's been high highs and low lows so far. And overall, it means we're doing okay.
What we'll do with some of these topics when we get to the end of discussing them, I'll ask you a little question. And Tom, you've got support in the chat already from your own podcast, so big up Tom there. Season so far then, if I was to ask you, are you happy after 6 games, what would your response be?
Well, in terms of performances, very. In terms of what's going on behind the scenes, not very. So it's a hard one to answer. As I say, that what I've seen on the pitch so far has been excellent. It's just the huge uncertainty that now comes with a change of manager within 6 games. So, yeah, I'm sort of like in the middle, trying to sort of like justify, why I'm not panicking too much.
But currently in the Champions League places, I mean, a lot of teams would take that.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Brighton fans sniffing at being 4th. What are you on about? I would be. I would be very surprised if we stay there much longer. Let's put it that way. Not because of, I think maybe you guys as Bournemouth fans, maybe you can sort of, appreciate this. You just never know what you're going to get with a new manager, especially one that is relatively unknown. It is a big risk, appointing Roberto De Zerbi. It's just so much we don't know about him. Will he stick with the same style of football that we saw under Potter? Will the same players still, be told to perform the same way they had been doing? Is he going to put his twist on the way we play straight away? Is it going to be after a couple of weeks, couple of months? There's a lot of chat in the press at the moment. Are we going to see some of our better players poached to Chelsea? So it's going to be what started as a really positive season is quickly sort of moving into a very much of an unknown. So a lot of Brighton fans, a bit apprehensive, but excited for what is to come, I'd say.
Now, Mike, a lot of people would say that Everton should be a team that's in the top half. only 7 games in, currently 13th, but I'm getting the feeling already from you that this is slowly building and potentially Everton could have a good season.
Yeah, I think obviously we prefer more points on the board, and I'd argue that we deserve more points. But that, it is what it is. You know, it's you look at some of the games this season. I mean, the Merseyside derby could have gone either way. Both sides had chances. You know, I look back on that first game of the season against Chelsea, and I think probably a draw was a fair result. But you know, we can see each game. I feel now we have progressed, and we are seeing a better performance game by game as new players settle in. As the manager has shown his flexibility. We start off the season with 3 centre halves and 5 at the back, if you like, and we then move into this midfield 3 that, as Everton fans, we thought was unthinkable. Probably last season we didn't have the players to do it. Basically, we didn't have the right personnel to play 3 in midfield, and that was always a concern. But like I said, smart recruitment has seen us change to that formation and inform. And a reborn Alex Iwobi slotting in centre midfield. He's been fantastic, and I'm sure we'll discuss him a little bit more later on in detail. But yeah, we're happy in terms of the direction of the club, and we can see there's a plan. That's the important thing. We under the former manager Rafael Benitez, he came in and he wasn't wanted. Let's get it right. It's one of the most bizarre appointments I've ever known. But he was backed. The fans had no choice but to back him. So when you come off the back of that, you do question the sanity of those on the board. And it's being questioned a lot more than what I'm questioning, to be honest. Where there is a bit of unrest is towards the board, but that's probably a conversation for another day. So when you make the change in manager last season and bring in someone who's a young, vibrant manager like Frank Lampard, it does get you excited. And he was going to come in to a positive environment because of what went before. So we are pleased with what we're seeing on the pitch. We are seeing certainly a change of direction from a positive perspective and improvements in performances, and we are looking more solid. The stats show that we are more solid. What needs to happen now, as obviously the games come thick and fast, is we need to start seeing a little bit more in the final third and obviously scoring a few more goals. But in terms of how we've started, I think it's overall been a positive start to the season.
John, close off this topic. Easy question for you. Are we happy as Bournemouth fans to be sitting in 12th with 8 points? Any position below 17th or 17th and under, we'll all take, won't we?
Yeah, 17th and under in terms of 1 to 17, I suppose, rather than literally in the table going underneath 17.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have to be. I think in terms of this position, there was a lot of worry going into the season about how much business we'd done in the transfer market. It's been well publicised that Parker didn't get any money, which is false. But he did get fewer signings than he wanted, and that led to an eventual change. But whilst there are things to be concerned about in terms of, the underlying performances of some players, and just generally, our XG values don't look great going forward. The players have been able to pull out goals from nowhere, pull out performances from places where, when we were in a dark spot. And there is so much more vibrancy about the fan base over these last few games, particularly with, results against Nottingham Forest, getting the draw against Newcastle, getting points from where we would expect, but that at the same time, it's sort of, because we know how much of an underdog we are, getting any level of points away from home against decent sides is sort of like, we can do this, we can compete, especially when you've been told by your former manager that you don't have the players to compete, and you are actually competing. There's a lot more positivity around the fan base, and we're a lot more confident in that we can achieve something this year than obviously, 3 or 4 games ago when we were all fearing the worst.
So let's go on to our next topic then, guys, and let's talk about thoughts on your club manager. Tom, I'm going to come straight to you. Now, Graham Potter done a fantastic job. He's been given the opportunity to go to a big football club in the league. I've put him up there with Eddie Howe as potential England manager. I thought it was too soon for Graham Potter to leave. I thought he was building something quite amazing at Brighton. I think the model that Brighton have is absolutely perfect. The Chelsea model, what's the lifespan of a manager? 2 years, and that's a concern for me. Touch on Graham Potter, and you're on a Bournemouth podcast, so don't hold back and let us know your thoughts on your new manager, De Zerbi, who Bournemouth was sort of linked with. He was in the list of names potentially, and he's highly spoken about in Italy from what I've read.
First of all, Graham Potter. I think I agree. He was building something here, and it really felt after the first 6 games, especially post Leicester. As I said before, we conceded in the first minute. We turned it around. We scored 5 for the first time in the Premier League. And it really felt like this could be a year something special was going to happen, that maybe we'd mix it up with the established top 6. But then barely a week later, he's gone. There was a lot of anger and there's a lot of frustration over that, not only has he left, as you say, to a club that probably isn't going to be as patient with him. For all of the plaudits that Graham Potter rightfully gets, it was also worth mentioning that under him, we had our worst start to a season ever. We went 7 games without winning for the first time since like 2006. We had several periods of not scoring in hundreds of minutes. We won 1 home game in a calendar year. So there were lots of times where Graham Potter's, he was never truly questioned, but he was always backed by the chairman, Tony Bloom. And as you say, Kirk, I just don't think he's going to get that at Chelsea. All it's going to take is a run of poor results and the fans are going to be on his back. I mean, I saw after the European game, Potter out was already trending. And, he got a lot was made about after a Leeds game last season where a small minority of fans near microphones booed because we absolutely battered Leeds 0-0. Should have scored a hatful, but didn't. And a few fans really frustrated that we hadn't. So they booed, and Graham Potter made this massive thing about, maybe I need a history lesson. And if he thinks that's bad, I think the Chelsea fans are going to be a lot more vocal if they have a few, poor results. But no, I mean, he's a fantastic manager. He's a fantastic manager. He's a fantastic coach. Absolutely gutted to lose him. But what I think most fans, Brighton fans, are gutted about is the fact that he took club legend Bruno with him, who played under us, retired for us, became part of our coaching setup. And then he left, as did Ben Roberts, another former player and goalkeeper coach, widely considered to be a world-class goalkeeper coach. So losing them 2 was a bit of a gut punch. And then there was just a lot of uncertainty about what this would mean for our season. We started so well. As I say, we generally thought something special was going to happen this year. And it almost seems like Graham Potter's stepped away from that. If it had happened at the end of a season, I'd probably be a bit more understanding. But 6 games in, it's hard not to feel bitter. It's hard not to feel that sense of injustice, I suppose. But as
Tom,
I said...
Tom, can I ask you just a quick question on Potter, if you don't mind? Only because we were linked with him. And when Benitez went, Marcel Brands, our former director of football, he was his pick. He wanted to bring Potter in, and you might have seen it at the time. He's not a fashionable name, is he? If he was from Italy, Spain, what have you, and doing what he's done, then probably he'd be a little bit more well thought of, if you like, from the general football fan base, should we say? But there was a story going now that he struggles with the stress in terms of management and that, and that's one reason why he wouldn't come to Everton, because of the fact that, I mean, Chelsea obviously is going to be a very, very stressful environment. Of course, the fans expect to be winning trophies all the time. Everton is very, very stressful because we have high standards. As much as we haven't won a trophy since '95, we have high standards and we expect to be challenging for things, and that's the way it is. So it must surprise that he's actually gone to Chelsea, knowing that only a few, say 6 months ago, a bit more, that those kind of thoughts were flying around. He does struggle with that side of the game.
Yeah, and I think Spurs were also rumoured to be sort of kicking around as well. It's, as I said before, Tony Bloom is a very patient manager. Very patient owner. Taking you a trip down memory lane really briefly, we once employed Sami Hyypiä as a coach back when we played in the Championship, and we were absolutely dire. We were sitting in the bottom three of the Championship towards Christmas, and Sami Hyypiä, story goes, handed in his resignation, but Tony Bloom would not accept. So he is a very patient manager, and he is willing. Sorry, I said it again, patient chairman, and he is willing to give managers time. And I just generally don't think he's going to get that another club. I mean, our standards have changed over the years. You know, Potter's got us playing a lot more attractive football than we did under Chrissy Houghton. And we have, you know, we finished 9th last season, which for Brighton, a club that historically have been knocking around the lower leagues, you know, we don't spend a lot of money, was incredible. So it was so disappointing to see him go. But Roberto De Zerbi, relative unknown, left Shakhtar in Ukraine because of the war over there. But as you say, Kirk, really highly thought of in Italy. Mm-hmm. The job he did at Sassuolo was, you know, very good as well. Maybe similar in terms of like Brighton's playing budget is quite small. We don't often buy many first team players in. Our model seems to be buy younger players, loan them out until they can become first team ready, play them, sell them. That seems to be the model that Brighton are sort of incorporating, because we just can't compete with a lot of teams that spend a lot of money on wages, transfer fees. So I think that was probably in the mind of Tony Bloom and the CEO Paul Barber when they interviewed him. Paul Barber came out and said that he was the only man that they interviewed because they rated him so highly. So from what I've seen of him, what I've seen of his tactics, just, you know, going down those rabbit holes on YouTube, you know, he does seem like a genuinely exciting manager. I know that other clubs have been linked with him as well in the Premier League in the past year or so. There's a lot of unknowns, as I've already alluded to, how he'll set up, how he'll change what had been done under Graham Potter. But genuinely really looking forward to the first game of his at Liverpool at the weekend. It feels like we haven't played for a long time because our games against Bournemouth cancelled, Crystal Palace as well. So it feels like we haven't played forever. So I'm just genuinely excited to see a football game again. And what will be, you know, if we get something out of the Liverpool game, that's great. We got a draw up at Anfield last season, so let's hope De Zerbi can go one better.
Welcome to the Premier League. Liverpool, first game. Interesting. Right, Mike, someone who knows Chelsea and's managed at Chelsea and felt the brunt of that is now your manager at Everton. You've got a new stadium coming as well, very, very soon, I believe, in the next few years. And it's an opportunity for him to take Everton back up the league. Rafa Benitez never understood that appointment at all, but you're speaking already quite positively about Frank Lampard, and it sounds like we've talked about already, but tell us again, it sounds like he's going to get time to try and build something here.
I think that's the hope, and that's a general consensus. A lot of work has been done this summer in terms of restructuring things, and Kevin Thelwell's come in as the director of football. He's done a lot of work with the younger age groups and getting obviously a new structure in place. Leighton Baines has taken over the under 18s. Paul Tate's gone from the 18s to the 21s, but he's brought in other people from outside as well to basically make our academy system basically what it maybe once was. And, you know, we always say we just don't bring players through Everton, you know, and that's since, you know, Wayne Rooney obviously is the biggest success story, and we've now obviously seen Anthony Gordon is the most recent example. But we feel that we should be doing better in terms of bringing players through and saving on transfer fees and having to go out and spend £25-30 million on players. So Frank Lampard's a big part of that. He's worked hand in hand with the director of football. They got on particularly well. I think their offices are next to each other now or facing each other at Finch Farm. So their work goes hand in hand. And I think over the years under previous management, whether it be Ronald Koeman, there's a bit of a distance, and the direction wasn't really known. Whereas we're now seeing it, and people have got to understand Frank Lampard is very new to management. Let's get it right. You know, it's not as if he's been around for 15, 20 years. He's still a young manager, and he's been at obviously Chelsea, which was a high pressure environment. But what I would say is when he was brought in, he was brought into a situation where the pressure was off a little bit because they couldn't buy players. So that was one thing that he had to go with what he had. He had to use the younger players. And And that, I think, has stood him well. And he sort of found his way to a way of working, because if you look at what he's doing with Everton now, he's got a lot of trust in younger players. Anthony Gordon obviously being the prime example, but Nathan Patterson, who's broken through this year, unfortunately injured after he came in from Rangers last season. He's come in now and taken Seamus Coleman's place. Looked absolutely fantastic. As per usual, gets injured on international duty and will be out for 6 weeks. But he's looked really good. But we're seeing, Amadou Onana comes in from Lille, young lad, 21. Looks, he was sought after. West Ham thought they had him, and Frank Lampard made a phone call, and all of a sudden he's coming to Everton. And this is the kind of thing that we want to see. We want to see young players coming through. We want to see Everton bringing in young players, very much like Brighton do. Brighton have got to be applauded for what they've done over the years in terms of their model. They're bringing players in for buttons and selling them for mega money, and they're rinsing teams and good on them. That's how it should be. If you want to buy one of our better players, you pay top dollar. And whether we think that as outsiders it's too much for a player, doesn't matter. They're worth what they're worth to the player, to the club that owns them. It's as simple as that. And Everton need to be doing those kind of deals. And I think having Frank Lampard on board with the behind the scenes structure which has been brought into place, with what we've seen in terms of recruitment this summer, and like I said earlier on, the shipping out of players who were at the end of the deals. Fabian Delph announced his retirement today. Obviously, we had Sigurdsson, Cenk Tosun, players who were just rinsing the club for years, and either being injured and not playing, or not being selected because they weren't good enough. And we're getting away from that. The manager is seeing through that as well, and we're starting to see a direction. And I hate the expression of finding an identity. We've been lacking an identity since probably David Moyes left, maybe Martinez's first season when we were fantastic, but we've lacked an identity since then. Let's be perfectly honest. And I'm hoping, and we're all hopeful, that Frank Lampard is the man to find that. But at last, we can see a plan, and he appears to be the man who can sort of bring some success to the club once again.
Can I just echo Brighton's model? I think it's a brilliant model, and it's something that clubs should actively look to replicate. John, look, I don't want to waste any more energy on Scott Parker. We've done enough of that this season already. But what I've just realised talking to Mike and talking to Tom is something that relates to our current interim manager and Gary O'Neill. And some of these managers that take these big jobs or big opportunities way too early, they have a sort of setback and then they have to rebuild again. Now, Gary O'Neill potentially is going to get this job. He might get it on a basis to the end of the season. I think Bournemouth fans will be very happy with what he's doing. He's definitely saying all the right things. What's your thoughts on Gary O'Neill and potentially taking this job on a full-time basis if offered to him at this stage?
It's a difficult one, I think, for me, because one of the more interesting stories that came out quite recently regarding that is that basically the players really want Gary O'Neill to get the job. And there's two ways to look at that. You can either look at that as the fact that he's got the players on his side, and that they're playing for him, and that they support him, and that he's pulling them in a better direction, which he definitely is. But the other way of looking at that is, when really has an interim manager when has a coach gone up to interim manager and then got the full job and then actually been a success long term? There's not many. It's not a thing that I feel happens very frequently. You've only got to look at, Preston had it last season with their Scottish manager that he lasted, a few months. I remember, with Bournemouth, we've had it a couple of times over the last few years. I don't know why I'm blanking on the youth team manager that got made into manager, but he was one of the worst managers we've had in about 2 decades. The only one that obviously the really success brings to mind obviously is Eddie Howe, who's a complete and utter fluke that just happened to come in, lose his first 2 games, get the manager's job anyway, and then take us on to ridiculous heights on his with some great staff around him. But I think that you hear stories enough of players, of managers that go into, they're in a particular mode. A coach and an assistant manager need to be a certain type of person to sort of be the link between the manager and the player. When you go from that to suddenly have to being the the guy that has to lay down the rules, and suddenly, you're treating one person in a completely different way. Eventually something probably clashes further down the line, and players suddenly think, hang on, the guy that he's not that anymore. I'm not really liking things as they were. And that, I feel as though, is probably why you get quite frequently assistant managers or coaches going into management that don't necessarily work at the club they start at. I think they generally need to go somewhere else where, it's a similar thing where Dubravka got demoted at Newcastle to number 2. Didn't like it. He's gone to Manchester United on loan where he's the number 2. But that's fine because he's settled. He's gone in knowing he's the number 2. So, that change up of managers is I feel is an interesting one. As for the jobs he's doing, fantastic. Couldn't rate him highly. I couldn't rate him higher in terms of getting the most out of the players he's got. He's shown that he's tactically flexible. I think he's doing some decent things with playing players in more than one position. Trying to shift things up a bit in games when things aren't working. I really like the job he's doing, and would be happy to see him get the job until the World Cup, where we'd imagine we probably got a new owner by then, if this story is to be confirmed, and maybe he might look to want to get his own man in. Because what I don't want is O'Neill to get the job, lose it in 5 months, and be out. Because I think he's a fantastic coach, and I would love him to stay within the club. And I think if you were to give him the manager's job, there's a risk that he kind of has to leave if he's not a success within the first few months. And I don't really want to see that. So it's a really difficult position at the moment with O'Neill, and I think just being allowed to stay as temporary kind of just works for us at the moment. So work on a game by game basis and just see how we progress.
Thank you for everyone currently joining us live on YouTube and Twitter. Do use the interactive chat. Please do hit the subscribe button. See if we can get the likes up as well. Now, this is the part of the debate that I'm really going to enjoy, guys, because we're going to talk about your squad. All right, I want to know about some of the players that are going to come to Dean Court, some of the players that we need to be aware of. Tom, I'm going to come straight to you. You've got some great attacking talent. You've got some real defensive players that are solid at the back, like Lewis Dunk. I know Eddie tried to sign him a few times, didn't quite get a deal on that. But look, talk to me about your squad that you've currently got in place for the Premier League. Then Gross is had an assist, Trossard, McAllister got a hat-trick, I think. And tell us about your squad and maybe one key player for every Premier League team to look out for this season.
So let's start with the man at the back, the captain, Mr. Brighton, Lewis Dunk. He's an absolute stalwart for us. I would go on record as saying I think he's the best English centre-back in the Premier League, and how he doesn't get picked for Brighton is how doesn't get picked for England is an absolute farce. But then again, I am incredibly biased. No, our back line is very solid. You've got Lewis Dunk, Adam Webster, Joel Veltman, all very good, dependable players. The system we have been using, wing back, Solly March has started the season very brightly. Another Sussex lad that has been at the club for the best part of a decade, I believe. So we've got a really strong sort of foundation. And then when you move into the midfield, as you said, you've got Alexis McAllister, who's actually robbed of a hat-trick thanks to VAR against Leicester, with one of the best goals I think you will probably ever see at the Amex, which is really disappointing. But no, Alexis McAllister is an interesting one because last season he was very much a number 10, very sort of forward playing midfielder, playing just off the front man. But this season, because of the sale of Yves Bissouma to Tottenham, he sort of reverted into a more deep lying midfielder. So he's very much sort of putting the tackles in and he's just pulling the strings from the middle, which is really exciting to see him sort of adjust into that position. And then alongside him, probably the most exciting young midfielder in our squad, and definitely a player that I think will struggle to hold on to, and that's Moises Caicedo. Absolute machine in the middle. He spent the beginning of last season on loan at Beerschot in the Belgian league, and then he came back and then he didn't play. And then suddenly he played against Spurs, I think it was. And boy, oh boy, did he make an entrance into the Premier League. And he's just been undroppable ever since. The game against Newcastle this season was probably my favourite. He was just putting in so many tackles and he's so vibrant, and he's just everywhere, covers every single blade of grass. So we've got a really solid midfield. And then, as you say, Pascal Gross, he's sort of come under a renaissance recently. We brought him in under Chrissy Houghton, played up top with Glenn Murray. Glenn Murray famously said once that the reason he was able to score goals in the Premier League after maybe not doing so with Palace and Bournemouth was because of Pascal Gross. And it's been so nice to see Pascal come back into the side. Gets written off a lot for being slow, but I don't think I've ever seen a more intelligent Brighton player in all my time, apart from maybe back in the day when we somehow managed to get Vicente. But no, he's just he's an excellent player, got a fantastic vision. He's a player that could do take a corner one moment and not beat the first man, and then the next moment he'll just do something completely genius, and it's just amazing to watch. And then up top, you've got a rejuvenated Danny Welbeck, who doesn't score much, but he just offers us so much up top. And if he can stay fit and start scoring, I think we'll be in a good place. And then alongside him, you've got Leandro Trossard, who this week put himself in the shop window for Chelsea. So if we can keep hold of him, keep the main squad intact after January, I think that we can solidify our place in the top 10. Maybe not push on as much as I would have hoped under Graham Potter, but I think that core group of players is fantastic. And I think, as I said, Moises Caicedo is probably the one. If I was going to say to anyone, Brighton player that you need to look out for this season, it's Moises Caicedo, because he's young. I think he's 20, Ecuadorian midfielder, absolutely fantastic player.
Do you mind if I just ask a question to Tom? Because I think I am fascinated as to what Brighton are going to be going forward this season, because De Zerbi, from what I've heard, and I think one of the reasons why I thought he wouldn't necessarily fit with Bournemouth is because apparently one of his styles is basically he just wants the ball at the back to just draw the attackers onto them and make it so that it's absolutely packed in your own third, and then just bang, just hit them on the counter and just lightning strike your way to a goal. Bournemouth probably don't have the players to play around the back like that, whereas Brighton, I think your players are so incredibly tactically flexible. But how do you feel as though your sort of deeper midfield and centre-backs are going to be able to deal with having that much pressure sort of foisted on them as being able to play the ball out from the back?
That's a very good question. I'd be less concerned about the centre-backs and more concerned about Robert Sanchez, if I'm honest, our goalkeeper. Very good goalkeeper, very good with the ball at his feet, bit too casual. We've seen it a couple of times when he's got the ball at his feet and he very much, off, the opposition play. He's almost like saying, come take the ball off me. Waits too long and can end up in calamity. So I think if Robert Sanchez, he is still only young. I think he's in his early 20s. If he can sort of get those clangers out of his game, I do think it's a system that we can use. Because we are used to being a possession side. The likes of Lewis Dunk have been playing that way since he played under Gus Poyet back in the day. Adam Webster, very good with the ball at his feet. Joel Veltman, former Ajax man. And then, you've got Tariq Lamptey, who's lightning quick. Solly March, wing backs, really, really quick. So I think it can be done. It probably will. We will concede. There's no doubt about it. We will do. But I think, as long as the players understand what is being asked of them, I do think it's a style that we can adopt. We'll just have to wait and see. It's not a style that I'd like us to play against Man City when we play them in October. I'm not going to lie. But, we'll have to wait and see.
Mike, talk to us about the Toffees squad then. You've got clubs looking to spend over 50 million on a Anthony Gordon winger, and you might want to talk about a certain new striker that you've signed from Brighton and Hove Albion.
Yeah, as I said, I think the squad is looking much stronger, and it's certainly got more balance about it. That's for sure. Since the transfer window closed, and you've got England's best goalkeeper comfortably in Jordan Pickford. That's not even up for debate. So again, the media love it, don't they? Love him to fail, and he doesn't do it. He's been probably our most consistent player for the last 18 months. So all this talk of Jordan Pickford only playing well for his country is false yet again. The media don't like to watch Everton regularly to see what he does. And, he's picked up an injury in the Merseyside derby, so missed the game against West Ham. Maybe back this weekend, could be pushing it, so Begovic could get the nod. But obviously a solid goalkeeper, a solid second string goalkeeper as well. It's good to have a decent understudy who can come in who's pretty strong. Obviously yourselves, you've had Begovic at
great goalie.
He's commanding. He's big. Not the best with the ball at his feet. No Jordan Pickford, but listen, he's solid and he played well against West Ham the other week as well. So good to have him. The back four now is solid. It's really solid. With Mikalenko, who's took a little bit of time to settle. He's come from a really distressing situation in Ukraine. He had his dad fighting on the front line, by all accounts as well. Took a little bit of time to settle, but we saw the back end of last season what he was all about, and he's carried on that form, and we know what Connor Cody and Tarkowski are. I think they were referred to last week as the bushwhackers, the old wrestlers from back in the day. And the Bruise brothers, the two of them just take no nonsense, and it's nice to have two centre halves like that who, touch wood, stay fit. They put the foot in, they're good in the air. The leaders, more importantly, they can certainly sort out our defence, and they have done. It's good to have them two. Mentioned before, Nathan Patterson, great season so far. Unlucky that he's been injured, but what a start he's had. I think his injury last season did him the world of good. He's put on a bit of muscle. He looks strong. He looks great in the tackle. He's full of passion, full of energy. He's your typical, for me, Everton right back. He's following in Seamus Coleman's footsteps, and I think will be at the club for many years to come. But I think for neutrals looking at Everton now going into the games coming up, look at our midfield now. That's the change. That's where Adisa Gana Gay's come back to the club. He was exceptional. What a player. He's gone away for a few years and been playing with the best players in the world at PSG, with obviously Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe, players like that. And he didn't look out of place. It's got to be said. Every time I saw him, especially in the Champions League, I think he looked fantastic. And he's come back in. He's played about a game and a half, say something like that. And it's like he's never left. Does exactly what he's always done. Breaks up play. Great sort of, taking the ball forward, starting attacks, and making the transition quick. He's then got in front of him. Mentioned him earlier on, Alex Iwobi, who's a different animal to what we saw. I think the turning points. Some fans go back to Leeds when Frank Lampard first came in. I think it was his second game, and we beat Leeds 3-0 at Goodison Park. I go back to Newcastle at Goodison Park when he scored in the 99th minute. That was the turning point for me, for Alex Iwobi. He's got a manager who believes in him, who puts his arm around him and tells him how good he is. And if you look at some of his highlights this season, look how quick his feet are. Some of the things he's done this season, I'd been there live and I couldn't understand what he had done to get out of a tight space. I had to watch it back and slow it down to see what he did with his feet. Technically, he's very, very good. He's good carrying the ball. His recoveries are very, very good. The stats speak for themselves. So defensively, he's worked on that. He's being played centrally, which is where he's always wanted to play. So if you play a player in the best position, you're going to get the rewards, and he's been exceptional. Player of the season. He's brought assists to his game. Needs to score a few more, which will come. But if you get to see him up close when we come into town, watch him. Just watch what he does, because there's a lot of stuff off the ball as well, which goes unnoticed. And then he's got big Amadou Onana as well, who's an absolute unit. 21 years of age, about 6'4", I think he is. Big long legs, can carry the ball, loves to put his foot in. He's one of those players, like I said, that Everton should be buying. He was 20 when we signed him, just turned 21. Pretty decent price tag. Don't get me wrong, but the initial payment is not big. There's a lot of add-ons, as transfers are nowadays, and some of those add-ons probably really aren't going to be met because of the fact, we're looking at things that might not be achievable in terms of the length of his contract. So, another one to watch. And I mean, you mentioned obviously our new striker Neil Maupay came in, and listen, he's for me.
Tom doesn't look happy.
I like Neil Maupay a lot, and Mike, this might please you. I don't know. Well, it might not do when I give you the context. So last season, Neil Maupay got a lot of grief from Brighton fans for missing too many sitters. But he always used to score those wonder goals where it was just instinctive striker finish. So on one of our podcasts, I did the maths towards the end of the season to see how many points that we got because of Neil Maupay goals or assists. And it was 18. So we got 18 points because of Neil Maupay. I think he's a fantastic player. And like I said off air, I do really genuinely wish him all the best because he is a really hard worker. He's got a fantastic work ethic. He does overthink and he does take things to heart if he misses, but he's one hell of a player. And if you can get him firing, I genuinely think, he could do really well for you guys.
Mike, does he need to hit the ground running, Mike? Because what's happened to Calvert-Lewin at the same time?
We just needed a striker in there because we started the season off with playing 3 wide players effectively in a front 3. So you had Dwight McNeil, Anthony Gordon, and Damari Gray as a 3, which was never going to work because you haven't got anyone in there who's used to being central and sticking the ball in the net on a regular basis. So for me, he's hit the ground running. To be perfectly honest, we're not sitting there thinking he's going to score 15, 20 goals. But for me, if he can stick in 10, we know Dom's got injury issues. He should be back for the weekend. He was being wrapped in cotton wool. He's had a really, really rough time of it, to be honest with you. And after the season he had under Carlo Ancelotti, when he was fantastic and he was scoring goals as all strikers should score, which is in and around the 6-yard box. That's where he was told to be, and that's where he was, and he scored his goals. So, it's a shame for Dom. Hopefully, he can come back and get back to some kind of form because we do need more than just one striker that we can call upon. That's been the issue with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It's always been Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and what came after him was Salomon Rondon. And with all due respect to him, it was a Rafa Benitez signing when we had little or no money to spend. It was another body to be brought in, but he's been playing in China and in not particularly competitive football environment. So coming back to the Premier League at his age, it was never going to work, and it took him about 6 months to get anywhere near Premier League fitness. To be honest, he was a little bit overweight and he was taking on extra training sessions to try and get into some kind of shape. And it's one of those. I think he's all right. I think now he should probably be playing the Championship, if I'm being honest with you. Not his fault. That's just his level. So a bit of pressure on Maupay, to be honest, because we needed a striker and because of the injury issues that Dom has had. So for me, he has hit the ground running, and people can see by his attitude that he's the right fit for the club. We love players who are annoying. We love players who are like a little wasp, who stand on people's toes. Tim Cahill was one. Stephen Naismith was absolutely adored at Everton. He was one because they're annoying. They love to wind other players up. You've seen it at Brighton time again when he scores against Palace and he's giving all that to the Palace fans. We love all that. That's what it's all about. And we like players who care and who play with emotion, who play on the edge. And I think he's shown enough in the first couple of matches that he's played in, for me, that he's going to be a good fit. And I'm excited to see what he can do over the course of the rest of the season. And, as I say, if it gives Dom the chance to get back to fitness, it means we haven't got to throw him back in, which the manager, he could have played him against West Ham. He didn't put him in the squad in the end because he wants to make sure that he is back and he's wrapped in cotton wool. So having that other body there in Maupay is a real help. And listen, if he's playing well and he's in form, then he starts the game. Whether Calvert-Lewin's fit or not, you play your players who are in form. So I fully expect him to be starting against Southampton at the weekend as well. And he's got good players around him in Anthony Gordon and Damari Gray, bit of pace, both with good feet. Anthony Gordon's improving all the time. Obviously linked to Chelsea in the summer. How much of that was just a lunatic Chelsea owner just literally wanting to throw money around? Because Anthony Gordon, he's nowhere near worth 50, 60 million pounds at this moment in time. That's just being honest. He's got all the, he could be a really, really world class player at some point, potentially. If we were offered 30, 35 million pounds, I'd say, most Everton fans were saying, take it, because, this time next year, he could have a season full of injuries like Dominic Calvert-Lewin's had. His value could then drop off. So you're not guaranteed to get that kind of money again. But Anthony Gordon's got a lot of potential. He still makes quite a few mistakes. His fitness is not quite there for me. After an hour, he gasses, to be honest. But I think because he puts so much in, he then struggles. So he's got a long way to go. But we've got good quality up there now. Maybe just need a little bit more in terms of numbers. Obviously, the likes of Andros Townsend is out until potentially the new year. So I think the manager will be looking to recruit somebody else. We were very, very close to getting Kudus from Ajax. It was all done from his side on loan. Ajax then, because Man United wanted Anthony, they wouldn't lose two players. And look at Kudus so far in the Champions League. He's been absolutely sensational. So one of those, but I think we will recruit in January. But the one to watch for me, I can't speak about him highly enough, and it's Alex Iwobi.
Fair enough. Right, John, we talk a lot about Bournemouth on this channel. Of course we do. Just summarise the squad that Gary O'Neill's currently got at his disposal. We've not even seen the likes of Fredericks, really. Rothwell's yet to come in, had a pretty positive pre-season, but players are starting to bed in now to this Premier League season.
Yeah, well, I mean, as well, in terms of players that have yet to play for us this season, we've still got David Brooks to come back, which I think even Bournemouth fans forget about, the fact that he is yet, obviously, is still on the road to recovery. I suppose trying to blitz through quickly from back to front, we've got two very good goalkeepers. We've got Travers, unfortunately, on the bench now after after the result against Liverpool. But we've got an ex-Barcelona, Valencia, Juventus, Fiorentina goalkeeper that's currently got the number one spot, who's doing very, very well, and is a little bit better with his feet, I think, although maybe not as good a shot stopper as Travers. So he's been very good so far. Lloyd Kelly, I don't know whether it's been confirmed how long he's been out, how long he's out for, but he's been an incredible defender so far, as has Chris Mepham. But we've got good cover in Senesi to get to play in place of Lloyd Kelly, who was playing in the Europa Conference League final only a few months ago. We've only got one left back in the squad, technically, but Jordan Zamora, a youngster, is one of the most impressive players in the squad. I think his numbers that he's putting up are actually quite incredible for what we all thought was going to be quite a limited player back in the Championship in terms of defensive ability. But going forward, we always knew he was great, but his all-round game has been fantastic. We've got Adam Smith at right back competing with Fredericks if he's fit, and then also Jack Stacey, who's probably not going to get much of a game, but we've got good competition at right back. And in midfield, we're looking pretty strong, I'd say. I think Lewis Cook, if he was playing in the number 6 position that he was playing in last season, I'd say he's probably my favourite player in the squad. I love a ball playing number 6, but we don't really have that spot necessarily in our squad in the moment. So we've got really good players in the likes of Jefferson Lerma as combative. Lewis Cook can do a lot more than just sit back and spray passes. You've got Philip Billing, who's probably our most important player in terms of if he's allowed to play, then I think Bournemouth can really do some damage in matches. Is our top scorer so far this season with one goal of the month contender cracker against Forest, and obviously a lovely finish from against Newcastle. And then on the wings, you've got Tavernier, who's come in and been very impressive from Middlesbrough, is yet to get a goal and assist, but he is our top creator in terms of chances, and it's only a matter of time before I think his numbers start turning up. But he is one of the most. I think he's top 10 in terms of attempted take-ons in Europe's top 5 leagues at the moment in dribble take-ons. He's seeing him on the ball is really impressive. Just his enthusiasm to just push forward with it, just take it and run with it. Even against City, you could see that he was the one that really was trying to do something on the ball. with Ryan Christie on the other side, who his numbers don't look as good, but his work rate is always incredibly impressive. And at the moment, he's keeping out Jaden Anthony, who's another youngster that we all really want to see do well in the Premier League. Bournemouth already got his first goal against Forest and is going to get some game time, which I'm looking forward to seeing more of, because I think he's very, very intelligent for what he does on the ball and his passing range. And then up front, we've got Dom Solanke, who's thankfully got the monkey off his back of his first goal, overhead kick, even with a deflection. They all count. So I'm looking forward to seeing him do more, because I really do think he could really push on. He's got so much about his game. He can hold the ball up. He can dribble. He can sit back and play as a 10. I think he could play as a centre back if he wanted to. He can just basically do everything. And then one hell of a reserve striker is Kiefer Moore, because I think with the way that the Premier League is sort of is almost shifting to a point where now a big man up top is you just don't see them anymore. It's kind of how Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think, was just so good in that period, because he beefed up, he made sure his jump was better than anyone else in the league and just got his head on everything. And Kiefer Moore is, he puts himself about, he runs as much as he can, I think. And I think he's just a player that's had to experience the lower leagues of football, and now he's got his chance and just is going to throw his absolute all into every second he's out on the pitch. And he's a joy. He's a joy to watch. Just the work rate that he puts in, and obviously he's a big man that will always interrupt a front line. That our first 11, maybe first sort of 14, has definitely got the quality to really put a good fight of staying up. And I think depth is something that I think, any fan outside of this team is always going to look and say, but, how much more is there to the squad? And I think that's fair enough. But, we're putting a good fight up so far. And I think there are definitely some players that have it in them to still be playing in this division next season, regardless of where Bournemouth finish.
Been really enjoyable tonight to talk to other Premier League teams. Let's have a look at the Premier League table as it looks going into club football again this weekend. You'll see Brighton in 4th, Bournemouth 12th, and Mike's Everton just below us in 13th. And to close out this show, I did set you guys a bit of a homework, didn't I? I did want to know where you think your club will finish and what the bottom 3 might look like. No offense, we appreciate your comments. It's all fine. We accept it. We're going to come to you first, Tom. So a brief explanation of your choices. And it's not that one. Let's put the right one on the screen, which I think is this one, is Brighton to finish 12th. I think you said to me when we were messaging that you probably would have gone a little bit higher under Graham Potter, but you're not sure under De Zerbi. But in the bottom 3, you put Bournemouth 18th, Forest 19th, 20th, Southampton. Actually, don't mind the Scum being bottom. So, yeah, explain your choices there for your season predictions, Tom.
Yeah, so really quickly just about Brighton. As I say, if Graham Potter was still at the helm, I'd probably be audacious and maybe even go as high as 8th. But with De Zerbi, it's a huge unknown. So I think anywhere between sort of 12th and above would be considered a big success for me. I'd like to think the squad has enough about it to sort of be challenging for that mid-table spot, pushing to the top 10. In regards to the bottom 3, it was really hard to pick, to be honest, because it is a really competitive league. And I think we saw last year with Everton and Leeds being down there, there's no givens in football. No one's too big to go down. No one's too big to be in and around that fight. The 3 picks I put, I had to put Forest in there because I don't think their idea of buying a whole new squad is a good way to run a football club. I think history shows you that just by spending money doesn't necessarily guarantee survival. I mean, look at Fulham a few years ago. Back in the day, QPR did exactly the same thing, and it doesn't work out. And I just don't think you can get that. How can a team gel when there's so many new players coming in from different clubs? I just don't see it working well for them. Southampton, I always think Southampton flatter to deceive a little bit. I think they always seem to be there or thereabouts, and they drop off. They always have a roller coaster of a season. So so much of it depends on how much they can sort of get out of their squad. I've always thought that if they lost James Ward-Prowse, that would be them as good and done, to be honest. And as for Bournemouth, it was hard to put Bournemouth there because I quite like Bournemouth. It's Bournemouth's a lovely city, been there plenty of times.
Got a lovely beach.
Yeah, lovely beach, much nicer than Brighton's. But yeah, I think what you said, John, about is that depth. Well, but again, on the flip side, if you can do what I don't think Forest can do, and that is get your team gelled well together, that togetherness, which I think has served Brighton so well, because you could easily looked at the squads that Brighton have had over the last few seasons and gone, how the hell did they stay up? And with Brighton, it was very much that togetherness. And I think that if Bournemouth can find that within them, I think they can make a good fight of it. It's just about the quality and depth that I think might hinder you a bit. But as I say, like I've been on the receiving end of plenty of they're going down. So I would never write Bournemouth off or Southampton, to be fair. So it was a hard one to predict, but I gave it my best shot.
Mike, I'm not sure if you had a beer with Tom at the weekend, but your predictions were Everton 13th, Forest 18th, Bournemouth 19th, Southampton 20th. So a bit of a theme here. Tell us about your Premier League end of season predictions.
Yeah, I think with us, a lot of Evertonians have got to sort of temper their expectations now. I think last season was an eye-opener. It was a lot of many years of mistakes led to the situation we found ourselves in, basically. And I think last summer should have really been the real eye opener and the real, the alarm bell should have rang then when we're spending £1.7 million on Damari Gray, and obviously we brought in Andros Townsend, Begovic and obviously Rondon, and that was pretty much our lot. So there should have been a bit of concern there. And then obviously when you lose quality of Luca Dean and James Rodriguez as well, you should start to be asking questions. Even then, we shouldn't have been where we were. There's no way we should be nowhere near that bottom three. And that was the worst part about it, was as much as the squad wasn't fantastic, it wasn't a bottom three squad, and that was the concern. But like I said, a lot of sort of bad eggs and people who were offering very little have gone. But I still think there's a lot of work for the manager to do. There's some real positive signs so far early on this season. The squad, as I say, looks a lot more balanced. Recruitment was good. They seem to be gelled. They seem to be behind the manager. But I think sort of anywhere between sort of 12th and 14th will be a real positive season. And it's a shame to say that, but that is my belief, is that I think that the squad could go higher, because there's not much of a gap between Everton and a lot of teams, to be honest with you. It just depends on the last day of the season where we all settle. So we could be higher, but I'd be pretty satisfied with between 12th and 14th, and that would be deemed a success for me. In terms of the bottom three, I agree with what Tom was saying really about all those sides. I mean, Forest are absolutely ridiculous in terms of what's happened there. They've had to, because of the turnover of players who were on loan and at the end of deals and things like that, from the Championship to the Premier League. So I understand why they have brought in so many new faces, but that's no way to conduct your business, especially going from the Championship to the Premier League. And I think they will come unstuck at some point. And when Lingard's going there solely for the money, just for 1 year, not signing for more than 1 year, listen, that's always a bad sign for me. We've been there with players ourselves. That's always a bad sign. And I just think the turnover is just too much. I mean, they could finish bottom, to be honest with you, which would be a real shame, because one of the traditional clubs for me, Forest, a big club, and they belong in the Premier League, but I don't think they're going to stay up this season. Southampton, I think their time's up. They flirt with relegation every single season. As Tom was saying, they always have this bad run. They always get battered a few times a season as well, and they tend to pull away in the last third of the season. They put a few wins together, and it pulls them away from trouble. And I think this time they are going to drop, to be honest with you. I do worry for them. And then yourselves, I think again the same. It's just a bit of squad depth. But like anything, it's always, when you're an outside fan looking in and not really paying too much attention. I think maybe Bournemouth are the easy option for us to sit there and go, yeah, they'll go down. Maybe that's a little bit of a thinking as well, but I am a bit concerned with the lack of squad depth. I've got to be honest with you. But what might go in your favour is, there's quite a few players who've been there for a little bit of time, who have worked together for a little bit of time, and that could really work. There is a little bit of quality there. You've moved away from being the team who buys all Liverpool's cast-offs from, which is good. That's always a bonus, because they were having you off big star with some of those prices. I'd
100%.
Jordan Ibe, 20 million quid. I think I'm worth 10 and he's going for 20, to be honest. But some of those prices are a little bit crazy. But yeah, I think I do worry for yourselves. I really do. I think a few injuries could really cost you. Hopefully, obviously, the management situation is sorted out sooner rather than later. Obviously, we're down at your place a couple of times in the space of about 5 days, which is a long trip for Evertonians, that's for sure. We'll probably just rent out a few caravans, to be honest, and stay over. But yeah, I just think the squad depth could be the main issue for yourselves.
Well, hopefully we've got something to play for on the last day of the season at Goodison Park, so that could be a big fixture. Right, John, last but not least. Now, I said to John last night, I want to know who you think will finish in the bottom three and where you think Bournemouth will finish. John doesn't normally jump to decisions. He thinks about it. And it got to about 5:30 today, and I thought, I haven't heard from John. I know he's a busy man. So I did put my own predictions on an image. And I went for Bournemouth to finish 17th, Southampton 18th, Leicester 19th, and Forest in 20th. And just as I uploaded it, John messaged me his predictions for the end of the season. And he went for Bournemouth to finish 17th, Southampton to finish 18th, Leicester 19th, and Forest to finish 20th. Just like Jordan Zamora and Jaden Anthony linking up down the left-hand side. We're in sync, John. That's your predictions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a Bournemouth fan asking where we're going to finish, you're never going to get me to not put 17th, basically the entire season, because you've got to stay positive, but you also know you've got to stay realistic. So I think in terms of Bournemouth going forward, there's still going to be some turmoil. We still don't know what's going on with this takeover. And even when the takeover happens, there is new rumours that apparently Gary O'Neill is being favoured by the possible incoming owner, and mostly because he's up for manager of the month this month. He's done incredibly well since coming in, unbeaten, and getting some very good results and good performances out of the players. So there's no real reason to rock that boat, especially if you're getting used to the club as a new manager. Unless he may have not have quite up there with the millions of Chelsea, but he's at a completely different club. This new guy compared to Chelsea's new American owner. So the worries that I've expressed before are that we're not creating enough, as far as I'm concerned. Not gone over 1xG yet so far this season, which is a stat that I think I've put out on every video I've been in for the last 4 weeks. So that's a frustration at the moment. But defensively, we are actually looking really solid, which is a very odd thing to say for a team that's conceded 9 goals in one match. But Lloyd Kelly and Chris Mepham have probably been up there as our 2 best players this season as centre-backs. So, I think against teams that we're expecting to get at least something out of, we've done that every single time. And if we can maintain that, then we will have a successful season. As much as you want to nick a point or here or there against teams against the big 6, you're not going to do that every time. So you've got to do well against the teams around you, and that's what we have done so far. So if we keep going like that, then fingers crossed, we will have a good season. But our conversion rate at the moment isn't sustainable, so we've got to start putting together some more chances, because Solanke is feeding off scraps at the moment, so we've got to do a bit better for him. As for the rest, I think Leicester's just an interesting one, because with no new signings, with the manager staying as it is, it's incredibly what's the word I'm looking for? Sterile? I don't. It's just not. Nothing's happening. There's no zest. There's no interest. It's all just so flat there that something. Bearing in mind that obviously, in 4 months could be a new manager and they've made 5 signings in January. We just don't know. It probably will happen and they'll escape quite comfortably. But as things stand, they're not they're not going anywhere. They're stuck in that bottom three, and I really don't know where their points are coming from. It's interesting. If they hadn't drawn that game against Brentford when they were 2-0 up, I reckon we could have had a completely different rest of the season. But as it is, that sliding doors moment has left them very much bottom of the table. Nottingham Forest. I mean, the other guys have said it. You know, they've brought in players 1 week that think they're going to start the game, and within 5 weeks they're now third choice. You cannot sustain a harmony in that squad by bringing in players just thinking they're going to start and then not getting any minutes, and it's just quite ridiculous. And I feel sorry for Cooper because I really rate him as a manager. I think he did a fantastic job to get them to get them up, but he is going to struggle to keep his job for the next month because that manager that owner is not scared of firing, and Cooper will maintain a really good image because he's been thrust in a position that he didn't want with that, and he's trying to make the best out of it. As much as I feel as though maybe he's not making the best decisions, you ask Forest fans and they find some of his selections to be a bit odd. You know, he's in a really tough spot there, and I can't see anything other than them finishing, frankly, bottom really. And then Southampton's an interesting one because again, it's just they seem to always go through periods this season where they don't perform well. This season, you don't really know what they're doing, to be honest. They haven't kept a clean sheet. They're not really scoring any goals. So it's not a good mix. And they brought in so many young players. I like the idea of it. Southampton's model should be bringing those 3 players through from their own youth academy, but they're doing it from Man City's instead. So you can always just you bring in the youth director from Man City, and he'll bring across 4 of the youngsters. I mean, 6 of their signings are 20 or younger. The squad's too young. They've not got enough about them. You know, one of the things I was a little bit worried about Everton was some of the younger players, and it's quite a young squad, and with the manager making the most of them. But even the young players, they're quite well established. Whereas, you know, Everton, whereas with Southampton, they brought in a bunch of youth players that have barely played a first team game in their lives. It's about time, I think, where something is going to backfire eventually on Southampton, and I could see it happening this season.
Really enjoyed this evening. Tom from the Albion Obsessed, it's been interesting to hear your perspective for Brighton. We'll catch up with you maybe later on in the season. Do leave us with a score prediction for Liverpool-Brighton on Sunday, whenever it is.
Oh, so Liverpool haven't started the season particularly well. They've been a bit all over the shop. Brighton, new manager bounce. I'm going to go with 2-2.
2-2. Mike, great to catch up with you. Hopefully we'll speak to you again at some point in the Premier League this season. From the Unholy Trinity Everton podcast, just making sure I don't mess that up. And you have got Southampton, a team we've all predicted, I think, if I can remember, in the bottom 3 away. What's your score prediction this weekend for Everton?
We don't score many, but we don't concede many currently. So I'm going to go for Everton 1-0.
Everton 1-0. John, back playing Brentford again. First time in the Premier League. We had a few belters against them in the Championship. They're a good side. Bournemouth, Brentford this weekend. We'll have a preview on Thursday night, 8 o'clock, live on YouTube. But what's your score prediction on this Tuesday evening, John?
Interesting one. Being at home, it's going to be tough that we're going to have a bit more impetus on us, because I reckon if we just sit back and try and catch them on the break, we might actually have a decent chance. But at home, a bit more impetus, could get caught easily. I'm going to stay positive and think that we'll get a result. So I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you tonight.
Thanks for coming on, Mike. Really appreciate this, and for all the communication behind the scenes to set this up. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all, Kirk. Really enjoyed it. Wish
you all the best. And John, as always, I'll see you very soon. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you very much for that, Kirk. And it has been, it's been a really interesting chat with the guys. So, really enjoyed this.
Do remember the details for our guests are in the description below. Go check out their podcast. Links are in there. One click, you can go and check out their work. And of course, we'll be bringing you more content. Please do hit the like video or the like on this video. And we hope you've enjoyed this different video where you've got to learn more about Brighton and Everton, because we're yet to play them this season. But until the next video, from all our guests and yourselves, we'll see you on the next one. Up the cherries.